Hey guys, Full on Rage back here again with another match breakdown video. I'm going to be breaking down one of the videos I posted, I think about a week back, called Base Management. I really like this match because I think in here there's some really good choices made at some very key times, and it showcases how to properly acquire bases for yourself, how to properly utilize those bases, and even more importantly, how to respond to an opponent who's acquiring and playing their bases. Basically, how do you manage your bases, and then how do you manage your deck in response to your opponent's bases? So let's get right into this. I go first here with two scouts, which means that I have only two options. I can either go and get this spike cluster, or I can get an explorer. Now, the reason why I don't go for the spike cluster is that even though it's very early in the game, I actually have first turn, so I have a little bit of an advantage when it comes to bringing out the cards that I purchased, and I could end up letting this spike cluster sit out maybe for 2 or 3 rounds before Swagner can have an opportunity to take it out, and I'm just dishing an extra 2 damage each time. But I mean, what is that going to do at the beginning of this match? An extra 2 damage per turn, let it sit out for 2-3 turns. I mean, what is that, an extra 6 damage? In the long run, that's really not going to equate to anything. If I already had some blobs, that's a totally different story, because I compare it with their abilities, and then its own ability gives me an extra coin, so I get some economy. But as my first acquired card, it's not really going to be a good investment long term. I'd rather just get an Explorer, get an extra 2 little bit of health, and then if I need the extra 2 damage, well, Explorers have that built in, because you could always scrap it for the damage. So I end up going with the Explorer because I want to have some economy out of the gate. Swagner does the right thing, in my opinion. He comes out with his 4 cards, his 4 scouts, and he buys the repair mech. Great starting card. Great starting card. Because you're going to get the 3 coin from it. So you're going to get some strong economy off the bat. That's going to help you acquire some of these better, stronger cards. It's going to have some scrappability, because I doubt this is going to be the only red card you're going to acquire. Especially if you're me, you're going to want to scrap. You're going to have some other red cards that's going to pair with it. And then later on, as you start to acquire bases, which we see, this trade row has a lot of bases in it. So Swagner and I, we're going to have bases in this game. We know that, right? So getting that card allows you then to later on in the match throw a base from your discard right to the top of your deck. Basically, it lets you use your bases more. So I can start knocking out his bases, and then he could throw them right back up. Great card, great choice, in my opinion. Now, I have 4 as well, and guess what comes out? Another base. That's why this is a base video, right? And it's all about the bases with this one. This trade row is literally all bases. And I'm going to go for the Recycle Center. The Recycle Station, sorry. Because that's a very powerful card. If anyone who's watching knows me, they know I usually go for the Recycle Station. If it's there, it's pretty much, if it's there, I end up grabbing it. Not only because I want to use it myself, it's very powerful, but I also want to deny it to my enemy. Because especially if your enemy has a good deck and they end up recycling right through it, you are in trouble. So it's a twofold. It's I want it, and I want to deny it to my enemy. Now that does not mean, guys, that if you get that card, you will win the match. That is not what that means, because I've had matches where I have 2 Recycle Stations in my deck and I get destroyed. But it definitely is a good card. It's not a card that I like to get right off the bat. It's very early in the game. To get it early, it's like, but if it's there, I kind of just have to grab it. It's great for maybe 6 rounds in, 4 to 6 rounds in. That's when it really becomes powerful. But I go for it, right? And then Swagner, what he goes for, I think it's 4. Yep, he's going to go for the 2 bases, right? I probably would have went for this drawer card than the Scarter card, because this is like a discount Recycle Station. That's what this kind of is. This is kind of like a discount Recycle Station. Not nearly as good, but it allows you to do a little bit of what the Recycle Station does. But he goes, you know what, I have 4, so instead of getting 1 base, I'm going to go for 2 bases, right? And now that makes me go, hey, you know what, I haven't gotten a lot of cards here that dish out damage. He's getting some bases. I have to make sure, this is something that I don't think right now, but this is something that's in the back of my mind at this point. I need damage cards because he's going to start throwing those bases out. Look, these are going into his discard, and he's got no draw cards. That means both of these guys could come out in his next hand. And I don't have anything to respond to that yet because I have not gotten any cards that dish out damage. And if those cards are sitting out there, especially together, the economy and the damage that those two will do together can start to put me really in a bad spot. So that's just something right off the bat, guys. If it's at the beginning of the match, and you have not acquired any damage cards, and your opponent starts grabbing bases, make sure you start grabbing some damage cards so that you can respond to those bases when they come out. And you're going to see how I respond to some of this stuff. But it is something that I have in the back of my mind. Now, I know that I have still 7 cards here. So whatever I acquire now is not going to come out in my next hand. It might come out in the hand after that, but it's not going to come out in my next hand. So what I decide to do is I know, hey, I'm going to have another hand before I can utilize anything I buy right now. I'm going to go for that mining mech because that mining mech is a really nice card. That's actually what Swagner already has. He has a mining mech. And I go, you know what? Oh, no, actually, that is not true. He's got the better version of it. But the Mighty Mech is also a great card. It's not as good as the one he has, but it has 3 coin, and I can scrap a card, and we all know that I love scrapping, right? So I decided to go with the Mighty Mech. Give me that scrap ability. Give me that early econ advantage. Okay? And boom, he goes ahead and he puts that base right out there. So that's what I'm talking about, guys, that, you know, when you see that, when you see those bases that go into the discard, he's got nothing here, that means these bases could come right out. And if you don't have anything to respond to them, and they're sitting out for a couple of turns, they're giving him extra cards. It's like because you only get 5 cards per hand, right? But if you have bases sitting out there, it's like you drew 7. It's like you drew 6. It's like you drew 8, you know? So you have to make sure that they are not sitting out there. You want your bases sitting out there. You do not want their bases sitting out there. So this is where I go, okay, I better start acquiring some cards that can do some damage so I can start responding to these bases. And I'm also going to show you how I get rid of this one. So I put out the recycle station, right? And we can't see it here, but during the game, I can click on this. So I know what my next 2 cards are. And my next 2 cards right here is 1 Viper and 1 Scout. So if I use my recycling station's ability and I discard 2 Scouts, right, I'm actually going to lower the overall amount of money that I can get. So if he did not have a base here, right, I could right now, if I don't use the recycling portion power of this, because you can either get 1 coin or you can discard up 2 cards and then draw that many cards, right? That's the ability. It's one or the other. So I can get a 1 coin from this, 2 from this, and then these 3. So that would be 4, 5, 6 in total. That would allow me to grab this. But I sacrifice that opportunity because I go, we got to get rid of this base. Why? Because I'm pretty sure, we know for a fact that within the next 2 hands, he's got another base coming out. In fact, I'm pretty certain that he's got a base coming out next turn, and it's that other green one, and he's going to have 2 greens synergizing off of each other. We have to get rid of that base, and since I know we have a Viper here, I'm going to discard 2 Scouts, and I'm going to pull that Viper, and then I'm going to pair it with the scrap ability of the Explorer to give me 3 damage. And then I get rid of it, right? So I sacrifice the ability to get this construction hauler because I could have had enough money to do that, but it's more important to deny my enemy that base advantage, right? So that's what I end up going with. So instead of getting the construction hauler, we cycle through the deck a little bit. We get these cards. What's also nice is I've now drawn my entire draw pile. So whatever I buy right now, there's a good chance it could show up in my next hand. So it's twofold. There's a couple of advantages, right? I'm cycling through the deck. I'm getting rid of his base. Whatever I buy right now could come out in my next hand, right? So it's a smart choice to make to give up that construction hauler to get that and to deny him that base sitting out there. What I end up going with, because I have 4 to work with, I go with the builder bot because I love scrapping, right? Now let me just throw this out here. This is kind of a general little thing to keep in mind. When we're dealing with the scrap cards, you have your classic scrap cards, which is I can scrap from my hand or discard pile, right? We've all seen those. Hand or discard pile. We actually have a card. I thought we had a card here. You may scrap a card in your hand or discard pile. That's a classic scrap card, right? Those are the best ones because they give you that flexibility. Of course, you're always going to want to scrap from the discard and utilize every single bit of benefit that you have in your hand. But as a fallback, you can always scrap from your hand, right? The next best thing would be a scrap from your hand card, which is nothing to show right now for that. But we all have seen those scrap cards where instead of it just being from this card, it's actually just from your hand, just scrap from your hand. Those are the next most valuable scrap cards because you're always going to have a hand, right? So you're going to pull 5 cards every time, right? So there's a very good chance you're going to be able to scrap a Scout or a Viper from your hand, right? The Builder Bot and cards similar to it in the sense that they have the scrap ability only from the discard. Those are your least valuable scrap cards because you might not always have a discard card. I remember I played a match 2 or 3 days ago where I acquired like 2 to 3 scrap cards from the discard. They were like really nice cards. They did 5 damage, and you also have the ability to scrap a card from your discard pile. Let me tell you, every single time I drew that card, I had 2 of them. Every single time I drew either of them, I didn't have a discard pile. They were my fresh hand from a brand new draw. And I was not able to utilize that ability. So I had bought these scrap cards and was not able to utilize the ability. So that's just something to keep in mind. There's a little bit of a hierarchy. You want the ones that give you the both options. Next best would be from your hand, and the least valuable would be from the discard because there's a risk that it could end up just going to waste. But if you have nothing else, absolutely, I'm still going to go for it. There's a very good chance that I'll have a discard, especially when you have a recycling station, because you might have that recycling station out. You might not have a discard, but then you might make a discard because you might recycle 2 cards, and now you have a discard. So still a great card to grab early in the game like this, you know. So I grabbed that. I go with the Cargo Launch. Cargo Launch is a funny card because it literally is just a draw card, and then it also can get scrapped for 1 coin, right? What this is utilized for, right? It's kind of like, well, what is the point of this card? There's 2 purposes to the card. One, it triggers your ally abilities. So if you have a deck that's heavy in yellow, it's just an extra little freebie card that's a draw card that just, you know, it replenishes itself essentially from your hand. So it doesn't waste the slot. It doesn't, you know, any kind of draw card does not waste the slot. It's a free card because it just replenishes itself by drawing another card. So it gives you that extra ability to synergize and ping off those factions. And then the other purpose of it is to scrap it for a damn good card. And you're going to see me do that in a little bit. Okay? And then I go with an Explorer. Why do I go for an Explorer? Because I still have 45 health. It's still early in the game. And we have some good cards here. In fact, we have too many good cards here because if I end up pulling a hand where I only get 4 money, which 4 money is a decent amount of money to pull in a hand, I wouldn't even be able to get anything. So I need to make sure that I am keeping my economy going. I'm juggling a lot of things here. I need to keep my damage output high to get rid of his bases. I also need to keep my economy high at this point. You know, you can see how every decision I'm making is in response to the trade row, to my deck, to what I have out, to my opponent's deck, and what he has out. And that's what you need to be doing in this game. You need to be adapting. There is no clear-cut recipe to winning. There are tips and there are things that you'll see me do and strategies that I tend to like overall, like outlines of a strategy, like, hey, I like to scrap, I like to get economy early on, I like to go damage later on. But individual decision making in terms of purchases and stuff like that, you have to adapt to the situation. You got to see, hey, in this case, I go, hey, it's still early in the game. I have 2. Let's grab an Explorer because I need to get some good cards here. Plus, I didn't have an option to get anything else, so. Like I said, I knew that base was coming out. So now what I do here is, if I didn't have a base here, I would totally recycle both of these Vipers. Because Vipers, they are the least powerful cards in the game. They only do 1 damage. And you might say, oh, well, I mean, they're just as powerful as a Scout, because a Scout only does 1 money. Yeah, but a Scout at least is like an investment, because that 1 extra coin can allow you to get a better card that later on in the match does a shit ton of damage, right? 1 coin could be the difference between getting this 5 card that does 3 damage or this 6 card that does 6 damage and 6 health, So one coin can mean could end up making a bigger difference later on in the game. Like I said, it's like an investment. But a Viper doesn't invest in itself. It literally just does 1 damage each time. So most times I look to scrap these right away, and I look to recycle them right away. But in this case, again, I don't want this base sitting out. I don't want him having an extra coin each round. So I don't have any damage cards here. Like I don't have any like big damage cards, like that does 5 damage, 4 damage, 6 damage, right? But what I do have is the Explorer. So what I'm going to do is, instead of recycling both Vipers that I normally would do, I'm just going to recycle only one of them. I'm going to throw out the Explorer, I'm going to throw out the Viper, so this way I'll have 3 damage to take that out. Get this guy going, which works out great because now I can scrap that Viper from my discard. So it doesn't even go to waste. Like, it's not even like it just went to waste into the discard. It went in there and then I scrapped it. I totally just got rid of it. And I got a decent amount of money here. I'm going a little fast. The video is going a little fast, I should say. Okay, so right here, like I said, I play these. I put them out because I know I'm playing them. I just want to unload that from my mind. We know what we're playing here. We know we're playing the Explorer. We know we're playing the Viper because I'm going to scrap this, do my 3 damage, take him out there. And then we're going to recycle the other Viper and the other when we're Scout. I'm going to utilize this to scrap that Viper, get him out of here. I have 5, 6, 7. Ooh, that's a lot of money. But look what we have here. We have the Nanobot Swarm, 8-banger, 5 damage, draw 2 cards, and you can scrap up to 2 cards in your hand or discard pile. Ooh, powerful card, right? That's a good time to get rid of the cargo launch. Sacrifice it, get my extra coin, get my 8, buy him, put him in. Now I'm feeling pretty good, right? I'm feeling good. And he doesn't have a response, right? I have a response to his bases, but he does not have a response to my bases. That's not good, because this recycling station is sitting out there. Now, before I utilize this recycling station, this would be a rookie mistake. So anybody out there who's still maybe new to the game, look at how many cards you have left here. Okay? Don't do this. Don't utilize this. Discard 2, then draw 2, because you're going to draw this card, and then you're going to shuffle your discard and draw it, and guess what? You're going to go play this card, and you're not going to have a discard pile to use it, and this card will go to waste. So make sure you never use that button, play all. Never use that. Essentially, forget that button even exists, right? You should be playing every single card you have consciously, strategically, and with purpose, okay? So before I utilize this ability, don't do the rookie mistake, right? And leave yourself with no discard pile. Utilize this card first. Scrap your dinky cards, get rid of that Viper. One of the first things you want to do is get rid of both of those Vipers. They're not doing any service for you. Now I'll discard the 2. See how it cycles in? See how I don't have a discard? If I use this card first and this one second, I wouldn't have been able to utilize the scrap ability. So I use this first. Now I end up getting lucky. I pulled that big behemoth of a card, draw 2, I scrap 2 more, I have another scrap card, I scrap another. I'm just going heavy on the scrap. Now I could have had way more economy in that hand, but right now, with all the scrap cards I have, let's just make this a super efficient deck here. We know I love efficiency, so we go for that. What do I acquire though? 5, 6, and then I get my construction hauler. So even though I could have gotten it a few turns back, I get it now because I invested for my future here. Okay. All right. Now he plays his cards, and now he's going to definitely utilize the 2 Explorers here. He's going to scrap both of those, get rid of that, which means I'm not going to have a discard pile, so I won't be able to utilize this card this time around. I also won't be able to get rid of that captured outpost this time around. I won't have enough damage to do it, right? So this is how things can sometimes play out, where you end up letting him have a card sit out there. And that could become dangerous. Uh-oh, now he's piling these bases on. Luckily, my deck has become super, super efficient, and every single hand I'm pulling now has some good stuff in it. And that's the kind of stuff that makes a difference. So we're going to utilize my draw cards, see what I'm working with, scrap my 2 cards, recycle some cards, scrap more cards, right? I have enough damage to take out 2 bases, right? Now I only have 2 here. We'll get rid of the what's the name of that card? We're gonna get rid of that little dinky card, the Builder Bot. Sacrifice that. Even though I'm gonna sacrifice one of my cards, it is a dinkier card, and we do not want to let him have any bases. We don't want to give him anything. Nothing for free is my motto. We're not gonna give him anything for free here. You get no bases sitting out. Okay. Now he's throwing some stuff out. He's grabbing some health. He's going to use it right away so that he can draw an extra card from the Solar Skift draw card ability, right? And he's doing good. He's making sure that my bases don't stay out. He's making sure he's dishing out some damage, and he's making sure that he always has a base sitting out for himself. So he always has a little bit of defense. Reason why I'm rewinding a little bit here is I want to just again make sure we are giving little tips, okay? Another rookie mistake would be to utilize these other cards before you utilize this card. You want to make sure you throw this card out first, the Fleet HQ, because whenever you play a ship, you gain 1 damage. So we're going to throw that out first. This way, when I start playing my other ships, we get the damage benefit of it. Now, why do I use the freighter first instead of drawing 2 cards? Because if you notice, I usually like to use my draw cards first, draw some extra cards, now have a nice big hand of 6 or 7 cards, and then play everything, right? Now I have everything in front of me, I can see what order I want to play things in, and I know what I'm going to be able to work with, right? Why do I not do that this time? Again, we have to see how many cards do I have in my draw pile? Where's my discard at, right? If I draw 2 cards, I'm going to get this card, and I'm going to get something from the discard pile, right? Well, let's beef up my discard pile first. We know we're going to draw from it, and if I do this, that means that any cards that after I play this card here, to draw 2 cards, I'm going to get this card, I'm going to shuffle the discard and draw from it, and I'll have no discard pile, which means that for the rest of my turn, when I start utilizing these other cards with the economy, those cards that I acquire are going to go into my discard, and I have to cycle through my entire deck to use them. What I'd rather do is buy something, shove it in there, and now I'm gonna be able to utilize that card much sooner. In fact, I could even get lucky and draw it right away, right? So that's why I decide to, instead of using the Nanobot Swarm to draw 2 cards, I decide to play my Fleet HQ, throw out the Freighter, buy a card into the discard, okay, then draw my 2, because that card I just bought is now sitting right in here and could be utilized much sooner now. In fact, I draw it right away. Okay, and then I just start playing. And because I scrapped everything down, I have a very small deck, but it's a very efficient deck. And now I basically just start working the synergy of all the cards here. You can see I literally just start grabbing everything. I like grabbing like those little blob cards, even though you can see I don't have any blob cards. That blob overlord hero, it's always nice to have, because if he throws out a base and I happen to pull a hand where it's all like freighters and scouts and stuff and I can't take care of it, at least I have that 4 damage. That could be enough to put me over the edge there and make sure I get rid of any bases. But I mean, at this point, my deck has become so efficient that every hand, you can see every hand is just a whole bunch of cards here. Okay. And again, I'm just going to start utilizing the abilities of my cards, grab things, throw them to the top of my deck. At this point, my deck is just so efficient that I'm drawing my entire hand, my entire deck every hand. Now, I want to point out I did make a mistake here. I was able to acquire a base directly into play. But what I should have done first is I should have bought something to put into the discard pile, because it also, by putting it directly into play, I end up triggering these ally abilities, one of which is a draw card. So I should have actually bought a different card first, maybe throw this out there, buy this card, throw it into the discard pile, then acquire the base directly into play, and then I would have drawn this card. You see what I'm saying? Small mistake. you know, this is a higher level skill, you know, play here. It's a higher level skill play to make to do that. And I just totally missed it. So don't miss that, guys. Take advantage of every opportunity to dish out damage. So what? I have 69 and he only has 31 health. I have seen guys come back from worse. I have come back from worse, and I have gotten destroyed by people who have come back, who I thought I was totally going to win. So never give your opponent any mercy at all. So what, Swagner's my friend? This is a game, and I'm here to win. Never give him or any of your opponents ever any mercy, ever, 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 because they will take advantage of it, and they will come back, and they'll beat you, and then you will cry. And at this point, he's just so low in health. There's absolutely nothing he could do, and I just basically play my whole hand again, and I just combo everything. So that's how it's done, boys. You want to make sure that when your opponent is acquiring bases early on, look at your deck, take an assessment of the situation. Do you have cards that are going to utilize damage, and you're going to be able to play them, take out their bases, so that their bases don't sit out there giving them benefit. And sometimes you want to take advantage of your opponent if they're not getting damage cards. If they're not getting cards that do damage and you're acquiring that, I mean, that might be a good time to acquire some bases. You know, if your opponent grabs a bunch of cards and it's all, you know, it's like this blob miner, like in the beginning of the game, they acquire this card, they acquire this card, and they acquire this card. You know, like they're not, or this card, they're not doing a lot of damage. You know, and if you can grab a base, you know, that has 5 or 4, that base might end up sitting out there for a while. You know, so keep that in mind. That might be an advantage, a good play to play over your opponent, and make sure to be cognizant so that your opponent doesn't do that against you. You know, always have good base management of your own and of your opponents. So that is it for today, guys. I will see you in the next video.